It could be you, homeless. It could be you, hungry. It could be you caught up in something that you might not really know why you're caught up in it. Now, maybe that's not too totally accurate definition of what some people would call an addiction. But that is going to be one of the things that we're going to be talking about today. The other is going to be taking a look at some of the factors. Oh, we got a call in. Let's see if we might have a question already. Let's see. KABF, you're on the air. KABF. Possibly a wrong number. But for those of you who are listening in today, I'm going to have my guest. One is a battle-hardened veteran who's been on the program a couple of times in the past, but it's high time that he was back on here and got someone else with him. So I'm going to ask both of these individuals if they will introduce or reintroduce themselves, as the case may be.
Hi, John. My name's Chris Gerhardt. I'm a substance abuse counselor in North Little Rock, Arkansas.
Welcome back.
The easiest way to reach me is by calling 501-478-0182. My office is at the corner of 4th and Maple in North Little Rock in Argenta. I'm on the bus line and the trolley line.
Okay.
And I invited a friend of mine to come along today when you called me. Her name's Kristy. And
thank you, Chris. My name is Kristy Burton, and I am the co-owner and therapist at Central Arkansas Group Counseling. We are located at 4700 West Commercial Drive in Suite B4, which commonly is next to the Golden Corral in North Little Rock off Warden Road.
Oh, now you're talking my language.
Right.
You mentioned Golden Corral.
If I could get an office in there. Our phone number is 501-918-9160, and we can be reached by email at centralarkansasgroupcounseling@gmail.com.
Okay. Now, for both of you, are you working what could be called regular business hours during the week, or do you have like any special arrangements for weekend or after hours work or anything like that?
John, for me, I'm in a position in my life right now where this is a day. For me, this is a day job. I get to walk my daughter to school in the morning. I also get to be the swim team dad and that sort of thing. So most of the time that I'm there is generally Monday through Friday from about 8 o'clock until around 5 or so.
And Kristy, what's your situation?
So I'll say yes to all of your questions. We have day hours, evening hours, and weekend hours. We do not have sessions on Sunday unless it's an emergency. That's the only day we close.
And if it is an emergency, and maybe you're not able to get back to them right away, the one of the standard, and I guess best things is say call 911. Would I be correct?
I would agree. Someone always answers at 911, so that would be your best place to start.
In particular, if someone's in a suicidal condition or something like that, if there's an immediate crisis, if there's an immediate crisis with a substance abuse problem, that person probably needs medical help rather than counseling at that point.
Agreed.
Okay. Now, from talking with both of you before coming onto the program, you two take a look at what can be called addiction, what has been described as domestic violence, and, well, you're kind of specialists, for lack of a better word, in your field. So, any particular reason for specializing that's necessary in order to do your work as best as possible? Anything along those lines, or am I going way out in left field?
No, I don't think you're going in left field at all. I think it's very important for a therapist to be very highly trained in their theory and their techniques. With my program of domestic violence treatment, I feel that it's very important to be trained in this to be able to provide the best care that I can. There's several different factors that lead to domestic abuse, and the more training that I can receive, the more knowledge I have, the better I can address those needs.
Oh, and Chris, you're doing something different.
I couldn't agree with you more in that I'm a substance abuse counselor, and a lot of times people that are substance abuse counselors are also people that are in recovery themselves. Years ago, I got some help. And that's about all I'm going to say about that. It was from the front of the phone book, though. Craig Ferguson's answer. But I also have a lot of letters behind my name. I've gone to school for years. I've been in this field. I've been working in this field over 20 years, and I've been going to school not quite that long. But I've got an associate's degree. I've got a bachelor's and a master's in this stuff. I've also got an alphabet soup behind my name. I'm a licensed alcohol and drug abuse counselor, certified alcohol and drug abuse counselor. I have those certifications in Arkansas and in Texas. I have a master's degree. I have a national level credential. I also do Department of Transportation evaluations for truck drivers, and that takes another set of credentials to do that, to do just that. So I really think that we have to have our professional chops down too. Right.
And well, speaking of which, okay, let's say that I've got some sort of problem, okay, and Kristy, I come to you, but you're saying, okay, your problem is not really necessarily what I deal with. You better go see Chris Gerhardt, or you better see someone else who has experience in this. Now, that's one thing, okay? There's also the need to find, whether it's a psychologist, psychiatrist, therapist, someone who would be, for lack of a better description, a good fit.
Agreed.
Why so?
Why sure. Well, yeah, I don't want to promote name brands of tennis shoes or anything like that, but some people like Chuck Taylors and some people like Adidas. Different people have a different fit.
I mean, personality is a factor, age can be a factor, gender can be a factor. There's a lot of different factors that can determine whether or not a therapist is a fit. The best advice I could probably give to a client is, if your therapist is not a fit for you, let them know so they can help find someone that is a good fit for you, rather than you just terminate treatment. We would rather find someone that works for you.
I've made a number of referrals that someone was looking for help. I wanted to help, but I could not. We couldn't connect well together, and what we did was our treatment goal at that point was to find them a good someone or an outfit that is a good fit, that's going to more closely meet their needs. That's why I think sometimes, I use this self-disclosure thing for myself. I'm also a cancer survivor. And when I found out that I had a cancer diagnosis, I went and found the best oncologist I could find for my condition. I didn't care if they had ever had cancer. It didn't make a difference to me. I wanted to make sure that they were skilled, professional, proficient, and capable. Those things were far more important than their personal experience with that disorder.
But at the same time, you hear the word more and more, empathy, that the person could empathize with you.
Oh, sure. I think that empathy is an important quality for many counselors and for many patients or many clients, that someone experiences that empathy, not only empathy but genuineness, genuity, that
being
someone
real,
and being actual, and saying, oh, okay, this is real.
I think it's also important to emphasize that with empathy, you don't personally have to have experienced it to be able to empathize with someone. You just have to have an understanding of what they're going through.
Gotcha.
So I don't necessarily, I'm a woman, so I probably can't go through the exact same things that Chris can go through. We're not the same gender. But that doesn't mean I can't empathize with what he's going through and understand that it's tough or that it's a difficult situation, even if I haven't experienced it myself.
Well, and I can, on a different level, I can kind of relate, because over the last couple of years, I've had to change doctors, and I was recommended to one, and we clicked pretty well. So that's why I'm still with that person. And there's going to be a medical test that I'm going to be going through tomorrow, and I'm hoping that I'm going to have this same sort of good, solid click with the doctor I'm going to be seeing in this area of specialization.
Sure.
If not,
I think rapport is really, really important.
Now, and rapport. Okay, Kristy, your area. domestic violence, okay? I'd like to follow up on that rapport. How important? Why?
Oh, it's extremely without rapport between a client and a therapist, the client isn't going to be as honest as they could be. They're not going to necessarily have the trust level to explore the things that they maybe don't want to explore. They're not going to be willing to try the techniques or the homework that you assign them. Without that rapport, they're not going to trust you to know what you're doing.
Yeah,
I've had a couple clients that told me the same story over and over and over again, and at first it seemed like a very innocuous story, and then when I started repeating it back to them, then they took it to another level and disclosed more about what was going on that day, because what they told me about was a story about a traumatic event that had happened to them on a particular day. They were talking about everything but that traumatic event. But I think what they were doing was trying to make sure that I was listening to them and hearing them talk
Really?
about real
Really
Actively
hearing.
listening.
right before they went on and did that. I think Kristy can attest to this, but there's a lot of times I have clients that it's not their first time in treatment. It's a lot of times. I worked with youth years ago, and I had some young people that were they had been in treatment or therapy from the time they were 4 years old until they were 14 or 15, or even older sometimes.
I agree.
Well, now, rapport, I've heard from a number of different sources that this rapport, this good, positive relationship between, if you will, treatment provider and client, a very great deal hinges on confidentiality. Again, is that right on the money, or is confidentiality something that's getting to be kind of overdone these days?
Oh, I don't think you could ever overdo confidentiality. Again, it goes back to the level of trust. Confidential, it's top. It's very important.
Well, would you say it's the important factor when it comes, say, to treatment, to therapy?
I think it runs parallel with therapeutic relationship, and it all kind of runs together. But without confidentiality, you really can't have a therapeutic relationship.
I operate with a single rule in the groups that I do, and the other things that I do. It starts with respect, and respect covers so much. Respect has to do with I respect someone's time that it takes for them to get there that day. I studied under a friend and mentor, and he suggested that I begin every session with telling someone, "I'm glad you're here today," because that recognizes and acknowledges the challenges that someone goes through just to show up. The idea of confidentiality is part of that respect. I respect that this is a professional, number one, a professional relationship, but also a relationship where we can discuss some things that may not be so pleasant and may not be, and those things don't get carried out of this space of this.
Well, let me put it this way. Yesterday evening, I was at a history-related group meeting, and we, by coincidence, were meeting in a room where it was either Alcoholics Anonymous or Gamblers Anonymous or something. Some sort of similar group was meeting there, and they had left a sign on the bulletin board, and basically it kind of summed it up. What happens in here stays in here.
There are some exclusions that are particular to different licensing and things like that. There is a duty, there is a duty to warn at some point. Someone's life and safety is less important than their confidentiality. The courts have held that up. I really believe that that's true. If I can help someone not kill themselves by violating that professional, by violating, and I think that is a professional breach of confidentiality to to call even the police or the fire or rescue and say, hey, this person has a gun, they have a plan, they're going to harm themselves,
or someone else.
Or someone else. Let's stop this, and we can deal with the repercussions of that later. But let's keep them alive first.
Well, it sounds as though that could be, for lack of a better thing, a variation on the old Hippocratic Oath. First, do no harm.
Sure, it is. It is, and that's part of that. Under that overarching umbrella of respect, I believe that's a big piece of it.
Well, now there could be someone out there who is saying, okay, well, I need to talk to someone. Before I blow up at somebody, but. You know, I just don't know if they're going to keep what I've got to say, to themselves. So maybe now would be a good chance to maybe identify and maybe to address some of the, well, for lack of a better thing, the myth that is out there, the misinformation that's out there for people who are getting treatment, whether it is for addiction, whether it is to prevent domestic violence. What are some of these persisting myths or misinformation that either or both of you have had to really deal with again and again and again?
Well, I'd say one myth that I've heard from clients is that they believe I'm going to call their spouse or their parent and let them know everything we've discussed. If the client does not want that to occur and doesn't sign a release of information to allow that, then they're
HIPAA privacy law.
Right. So confidentiality is going to exclude the therapist from telling anyone about what goes on in therapy aside from the duty to warn, and even the duty to warn is going to be limited to information that pertains to the duty to warn. So we're still not going to release all the information that's ever been discussed in therapy, even in a duty to warn situation.
Right. I think one of the other myths sometimes is that someone's motivation has to be entirely intrinsic, that they have to do it for themselves. I think that's baloney.
No, I agree.
People can get well because they want to be a good father, or they want to be a good mom, or they want to do well at school, or for all sorts of different motivating factors. I think whoever has their own motivating factor, that's their motivating factor, and we have to. I think as a therapist or a counselor, we have to work with that.
Well, and then I don't know if this would be considered like another bit of misinformation or myth or maybe misdirection. But someone would come in, well, Kristy, for example, domestic violence. I get so mad all the time. I lash out at my spouse. I really tear my kids up one side and down another when they don't do well. I'm just so mad all the time. What's wrong? What's going on with me?
Well, anger can be a part of domestic abuse. There's several other factors, but anger is a part of it. So in that particular case, we would want to explore the causes.
I've heard you refer to it as a kind of a second emotion. Could you follow up and maybe go into a bit more detail on that?
Yeah, so anger is typically a secondary emotion, which means that there was an initial emotion, whether it was disappointment. So I'm disappointed in my kid's grade, so that led me to become angry or to act out in anger. Or I have fear, or I felt disrespected. So oftentimes there's an initial emotion. I'd probably say all the time. I say often. It's all the time. There's something happened before it got to the anger. So there's a tension building phase that kind of leads to the anger. And it can be quick or it can be a longer process. But it's important to identify what that initial emotion was.
Kristy, you see that with people who come in for addiction treatment?
Oh, sure. There's a lot of underlying stuff. I have a friend of mine back in Houston. She called it ick, the clinical term of ick, that people go around with a lot. People go around with a lot of baggage sometimes, and a lot of times there's a lot of things that people tell themselves that may or may not be true. There may be some facts involved, but that may or may not be the truth.
Well, everybody at work is against me. It seems like no matter what I do, I just can't make any friends. Everybody blames me for everything, and I just can't take it anymore. Something like that.
Right. So one of the catchphrases that I use a lot is, if what you're doing isn't working, you have to do something different. So helping the client identify and really believe that they're in control of their life. They're not in control of anyone else. They can't control what their coworkers are doing or saying, whether they really are out to get them or not. They can only control how they respond to what's going on, to the situation at hand. So it's important for the client to identify that they are in control of their reactions and how they respond to a situation regardless.
Now, this brings up something that we were talking about just before going on the air, and that is, okay, that there are circumstances that cannot be controlled. Well, we could be, maybe for some people out there, kind of treading on the wrong path, and that is where, well, I get so mad, so everybody else must be getting mad. So apparently, we're talking about maybe, and I'm going to use the dirty phrase here, a one-size-fits-all attitude or approach.
Well, and Chris is going to talk on this as well, but I don't necessarily believe that there's one answer for everyone. There's too many factors involved to be able to say that one solution works for everyone. It's important to identify what's going on there.
Well, something you talked about is what you just cycles of abuse. Now, maybe it would take a different, if you will, specific trigger for someone. Okay, like I blow up at someone. Maybe it's because I learned that I'm going to be audited by the IRS, and someone blows up out of a different thing, perceived that my wife, my significant other, has been flirting again, and I just can't take it anymore.
And I think, John, sometimes we have to look at some of the perceptions that people have. I think a lot of times everybody's angry, everybody's getting into fights, everybody's drinking, everybody's using something. I think when we're looking at an individual who's doing a lot of generalizations about everybody, there's some flaws there. I think that sometimes we have to look at I think the best question is sometimes what we can ask as a therapist is what do you want? Do you want a fight at work? Do you want aggravation? Do you want some kind of external stuff going on?
And so by starting with that, you can get a person to go from the general sort of to the specific deduction.
Well,
the power of deduction,
and to do some things. I think we all want to be that guy or that gal. We don't want to be that guy or that gal. Hey, you better watch out for your purse. You better look out because this guy's going to let you down. This person's going to disappoint you. We all want to be. There's this general belief that I think 98 out of 100 people, I'd say, want to be that guy or that gal. That we want to be someone that someone can count on. We want to be someone that someone can trust, that can be trusted. We want to be someone that can be trusted to our word. We want to be someone who is, I want to say more. I don't know if I want to use the word moral or not, but someone who's of good character, someone who is consistent, and someone that other people can count on to fulfill the roles we have in our lives.
Now, we're going to have to hold it right there. We're at the bottom of the hour already. We're going to take about a 1-minute break. You're listening to this week's edition of It Could Be You. We've only scratched the surface, and we're going to be coming back, and the phone line will be open, but hang in there. We're going to be back in about a minute. John S., It Could Be You for this week.
Profile America, Wednesday, May 24th. In a way, today marks the 173rd birthday of the World Wide Web. Only it was electromechanical, not digital. On this date in 1844, Samuel F.B. Morse activated the first telegraph line, sending a dots and dashes code message from the U.S. Capitol building to a receiver in Baltimore. By the late 1850s, the first telegraph cable had been laid across the Atlantic Ocean, and in 1861, the telegraph spanned the continental United States. Over the ensuing decades, the wires wrapped around the world. From the 1844 demonstration, telecommunications today has grown into a $500 billion a year industry and employs more than 1 million workers in over 50,000 industry establishments. You can find more facts about America from the U.S. Census Bureau online at census.gov.
welcome back to the second half of this week's It Could Be You. John S., your host, back in the KABF studio. Now, for those of you who tuned in a little bit late, I'm going to ask my two guests to reintroduce themselves, give a little bit of information about what they're doing and how you can get in touch with them depending on need.
Hi, I'm Kristy Burton, and I'm the co-owner and therapist at Central Arkansas Group Counseling. We're located at 4700 West Commercial Drive in Suite B4, and that's located next to Golden Corral off Warden Road in North Little Rock. Our phone number is 501-918-9160. We offer a variety of group counseling to include domestic violence offender, substance abuse addiction, and pornography sexual addiction groups. We also offer individual and family counseling as needed.
Okay.
And I'm Chris Gerhardt. I'm also a substance abuse counselor in North Little Rock, Arkansas. I do individual counseling, assessments, evaluations. I also do DOT evaluations. That's for people that are truck drivers or pipeline workers, anybody who's covered by the Federal Motor Carrier Act. If you've made a mistake with that and you need to get in the return to duty process, I am the person to talk to. Phone number is 501-478-0182.
Okay, all right. Now, one question I should have asked at the top of the hour, but let me do it now. Someone out there is listening to what both of you are saying, and they're saying, this is the first chance I've really had to listen to someone who might get it, what I'm going through. But doggone it, I live in Harrison. I live in Walnut Ridge, and I don't want to have to drive all the way down to North Little Rock. Well, but they call in, and would they be able to get, for lack of a better word, referrals to people in their area?
Sure. I keep a net because of my involvement with the DOT, with the Department of Transportation stuff, with with that part of it. I keep a network of I keep involved with a network of people and referral sources in different parts of the state. I also use I actually was at a thing yesterday morning with the Good Grid, and they have a really great service there for coordination and referral and that sort of thing.
And for just general public disclosure, the Good Grid have also been guests on this program, and they're scheduled to be back on the It Could Be You for a little bit later on in the year.
As far as treatment with Central Arkansas Group Counseling, give us a call. We have referrals, but we also travel. We're working on some relationships to be able to provide some traveling, some services in some more rural parts of the state. We also are in the process of looking into being approved for distance counseling, which means we would be able to provide therapy services through internet services.
Gotcha. Now, I'd like to kind of throw something at both of you. There are any number of occasions, and one of the classic or stereotype things is someone who's been an alcoholic crashes to the absolute bottom, then he or she says, I've got a problem, I need help. So that person, for lack of a better description, voluntarily goes in for treatment, whether it's going to be through Alcoholics Anonymous. Chris may be working through someone who provides addiction, if you will, therapy. But then there could be, and Kristy, I think you touched on this, that there are going to be other individuals, I don't have a problem, but that blank, blank, blank judge in the court ordered me to see you.
So if you've ever seen the movie A League of Their Own, the Gina Davis character, I've forgotten her name, but in it she talks to her little sister and she says, I didn't get you on the team, I just got you on the bus. So it's kind of the same philosophy. The judge just got you in the door. The judge does not, you still have a choice in whether you participate in therapy or whether you even attend it. The judge just orders it. So I think it's important, Chris touched on this before and he'd probably expand on it, but it's important to help the client identify a motivator. Whether the motivator is, I want to comply with the court and not have to deal with the consequences of that. Or maybe the motivator is, you know what, I'm going to be here anyway, so maybe I'm going to get something out of this to have a better relationship with my family or my children. So that helps.
Well,
I think motivation is so underrated or underappreciated a lot of times, because people have all sorts. We were talking about this before
Right.
we even started. That people have all sorts of different motivations for doing what they do. They may be motivated by the judge. They may be motivated by the family. They may be motivated
the
by
sort of carrot and stick, if you will.
Sure, and finding out what that and sometimes learning what that carrot is, and maybe even providing some clarity on additional carrots, maybe a turnip or a
Right,
or an apple or
exactly.
something out there also.
Absolutely.
That there may be some fringe benefits in addition to complying with the court. I've had some people that. In addition to complying with a court order to stop using cannabis, they've found out, oh my gosh, I can go back to school and I can learn something. And these people, and some of these people were very dismayed or disillusioned by. They held on to this illusion that, hey, smoking pot isn't stopping me from doing anything, but oh my gosh, I've stopped smoking pot now for 6 months, and I'm enrolled in school again. I'm keeping a job. I have more money in my pocket, and I've actually lost 10 pounds, and it's like, how did that happen? What's the one thing that changed in your world? And they're
Exactly.
like, I stopped smoking pot because the judge told me I had to, or I'd go to jail. And I'm like, well, there's it's kind of a, well, those fringe benefits, those extra carrots that are hanging on the bunch there.
Now, the phone line, I did want to mention the phone line is open, 501 if you need the area code, 433-0088. My guests here would really like to get your comments. If you have any questions, 433-0088. Call in and just lay it open. You know, you have some uncertainties. You want to get some more specific information. 433-0088. Now, at the top of the hour, Chris, you were talking about addiction, and Kristy, you're talking about your focus on domestic violence. What happens, or let me put it this way, can the two be connected in, say, certain cases, with what certain people are doing, acting, reading, etc.?
85-90%.
I'd say absolutely can be connected. Substance abuse, whether it's drugs or alcohol, it can lower your inhibitions and make you maybe do something that you wouldn't do when you're sober. And it can, what I've seen is it gives that client what they feel like is an excuse for their behavior.
A crutch.
Right.
And then at the same time, it seems to propel the alcohol and the other drugs seem to.
I can't help myself. I do this. I can't help. People have tried, but.
And sometimes those judgments between the judgment and perception of what's right to do and what's wrong to do may be affected also by this by a particular substance.
Well, and I think it almost heightens the sensitivity. So what someone may say when you're sober doesn't affect you, but when you're intoxicated or under the influence of a substance, what they say is going to have a heightened response. You're going to have a heightened response to that and take it maybe more personal.
And sometimes one of the things that I see with abstinence and recovery sometimes from substances is that a lot of times the substances are they are the coping mechanism. They're the single coping mechanism that they've been using if they start using a drug at 15 or 20 and they're using until they're 35 or 40. That's a lot of times it's sad to say this, but a lot of times that's the one thing that they've been doing consistently for any period of time. They've dropped out of a lot of time, and not saying that drug use causes them to drop out of school, but a lot of times they've stopped going to school or not going to school, or they're not succeeding in other areas of their lives because for a variety of different factors, but the drug use becomes a way to cope with that, and it becomes the primary number one coping mechanism.
And I could also maybe hazard the guess, and again, tell me if I'm going off in the wrong direction, that the drinking, the drug use, the lashing out at other people is because that person has such a deep, deep problem or fear or something that it's a kind of an insulation where they don't have to face it.
Sometimes they may use alcohol or drugs, a coping mechanism, like Chris said, because they regret what they've done or they feel guilty about what they've done. They may also use it to try to relax, or what they feel like is to relax, because they feel the tension building and the irritability and all the factors that lead to an anger outburst. They feel that coming, so that maybe they drink because they feel like it's going to help them relax. So then it actually can cause more problems, depending,
because it lowers the
Right.
it lowers the inhibitions, and sometimes the problems we see things with issues like money and things like that that seem to be underlying some of these things that. They argue because they don't have any money, so he goes and gets drunk and spends all the money.
Right, which just causes more problems. And
Right.
Well, then this may not be as hypothetical as I thought it would be, but it sounds like that there are going to be instances, there are going to be some cases that if a person has been quote unquote diagnosed with a particular addiction, that person will be possibly susceptible to other kinds of addictions?
I think that people can swap one addiction for another. They can transition from one substance to another, or one style of using to another. I think that I do believe that sometimes putting your hands on somebody else can become an addiction.
anger can be addictive.
Can be an addiction. Can be considered an addiction in and of itself. A lot of it has to do with power and control, and who has the power and control. Is there the people that I've seen? I've seen this in my professional life, that people would be told to stop. They were told to stop using substances while they were on supervision, but they were allowed to drink alcohol. And if they were allowed to drink alcohol, what happened?
Right. That it typically would increase, they would swap their addiction. But I think it is important to identify that it oftentimes depends on why the person was using the substance to begin with. Are they getting a high from their addiction? Is that why they're using it? So if you take one addiction away, oftentimes they're going to swap it for another one, whether it is gambling, another substance, or pornography, or whatever type of addiction it may be. If they're getting a high from their addiction, I have seen that they're more likely to swap that. It could even just be to cigarettes or food, because you're swapping it and you want that same high that you're getting from your addictive behavior.
There's not a pot buzz at the bottom of a beer can.
You mentioned a scene from A League of Their Own, but I was thinking of an episode I saw years and years ago of the sitcom Alice, and the main characters were all, and this was played for laughs again. That one person was addicted to chocolate, another to smoking, another to gambling, and so on. And by the time that the program ended, they had all swapped addictions. So
that's exactly what I'm saying. It depends on the reason for the addiction.
Well, now I've also heard, and again, I think this is a fascinating field that has finally gotten a good deal, I think, of long overdue attention. And that is research that's being done in finding the causes, quote unquote causes, of addiction. There could be a physical thing there. I've heard so much being done with genetics that there's a particular genetic markup that would point someone in the direction, say, of a certain form of addiction, or they don't have the quote unquote resistance or tolerance to higher levels of alcohol. Or there could be, a chemical or a mental or a social root of addiction.
It sounds like you're running down the American Society of Addiction definition of addiction, and there's so many different factors. Someone can have the genetics and never we know a bit about alcohol because we've studied it for a long time, and it's been around for a while. And it's caused a lot of problems. So we've studied it, and we've spent some money on research and things like that. We do know that there are some genetic factors that seem to be associated with alcohol problems. That said, if someone has those genetic factors and they never take a drink of alcohol, they never have a problem with their drinking. They could have all the lead up for it, but if they don't engage in it, they don't have a problem with it.
Right. I think it's still important to emphasize that we have a choice. You know, we choose how to. You know, we may need help in making those choices, or we may need help continuing to make those choices. But ultimately, we have a choice in what we do.
Well, let me throw this at you. You say choice. I've heard of a number of stories where a person becomes addicted and they themselves are totally, absolutely clueless, or they just simply don't know that they're becoming addicted.
I think that at some point, John, I think that people have a suspicion, because we're not stupid. We're generally not stupid. If the prescription bottle says take 1 every 4 hours and you're taking 4 every hour, there's a disconnect there. And I think that one of the, I don't want to talk like a religious person or a holy man or something like that, but I think one of the biggest problems with addiction is that we have a disconnection between our thoughts and our action, between our thoughts and our actions.
I don't have a problem.
And our beliefs.
I don't have a problem. I'm in control. I can stop whenever I want to.
And that's why I think it's important. That's what I'm saying is sometimes you need help. You need help identifying that you have a choice. So someone may need to be there to help you, whether it's a support person or accountability partner. You have someone there that's reminding you have a choice whether you use that substance or not. You may not be able to handle it, but
and there is another way.
Yeah.
One of the things that's informed my counseling for years, I got this quote from somebody. He said, "It's more important to have someone see me through than it is to have someone see through me."
I think in everything in life we need accountability, whether it's at work or whether it's at home or whether it's through our treatment process. We need someone to help us stay accountable until we're able to hold ourselves accountable.
In groups such as Alcoholics Anonymous, for example, they have, if you will, sort of branch groups. Al-Anon, for example, which is going to help the family members of someone who's in alcoholism, or Alateen, for young people, okay? Are there similar programs? Are there similar developments, for example, with domestic violence?
There are some agencies that offer support groups for families of domestic violence. There are a lot of support groups for victims of domestic violence. So yes, there's quite a bit.
And as far as the substance abuse stuff, in the Central Arkansas area, AA is a huge presence, and there are a number of different things like Al-Anon and Alateen groups that meet quite regularly in the Little Rock area. From my understanding, they don't discriminate against someone whose friend or family member has a problem with a powdered substance rather than a liquid one.
I suppose then that one of the most important things, whether a person is undergoing the treatment, the therapy directly, or if it's a loved one, a family member, some coworker, however you want to describe it, that one of the first and most important things then, and correct me if I get this wrong, is to know that you are not alone.
I think that can be really important. That can be important. I believe that addiction, substance dependency, I think domestic violence can become a real isolating factor. That when I have someone come into my office and they say, "Everybody I know gets high," everybody does it this way. That tells me something about what their social circles are like.
And it's also a little something called glittering generalities in political terms. Yeah.
Well, it's part of their justification process.
Oh, well, now there was something that that you both brought up, and let's take a look at a particular, if you will, target group: veterans, disabled veterans. Okay. My brother, for example, is a veteran. He was disabled in military service. Okay. So far, I've not heard any of the quote-unquote horror stories that a lot of people may hear about the veteran who is so traumatized that the veteran, he or she, starts taking illicit drugs or alcohol or lashes out at a loved one.
It happens. I think it's not as frequent as it was decades ago because the knowledge is out there, the information is presented, and so at least I hope our veterans are more aware of the services that are out there for them, but also going into combat areas, they are kind of alert to, I could potentially become traumatized, and they kind of handle it at the time and instead of just waiting years and years for that.
Okay, let's see. We have a question here. KABF, you're on the air.
Yeah, I was just wanted to see what y'all thought about the idea of gateway drug and what you consider is the gateway drug.
Can I take that one?
Go for it.
I don't really like the idea of gateway drugs. I don't like the term gateway drugs because that implies that if someone uses a gateway drug, that they're going to automatically use a much stronger drug somewhere later in their life. I do believe that there are introductory substances, substances that culturally or environmentally are easy for people to take because they may be legal, because they may be accessible, and they may be available to that person, and attractive.
Well, I'm just going to comment that I've always heard everybody throws out the word marijuana as the gateway drug, but actually there's new evidence in some studies that were recently published in Neuroscience, and they're saying that there's a chemical change that occurs when an individual uses nicotine for the first time that enables them to appreciate other drugs. In other words, they get a higher high when they use these other drugs because it's a learned experience. But there's actually a chemical modification that occurs in the brain from the use of nicotine. So nicotine would be the gateway drug.
Okay.
I think that when someone begins altering their brain chemistry with powerful neurochemicals, nicotine's one of them. The class of drugs that are cannabinoids, with alcohol, with anything, that they make some changes in their brain, and sometimes those are very lasting changes. We know we're learning that there's a lot of information, that we're learning that there's a lot of different stuff that's going on in the brain, but I've heard some people say that we only know about 3% of what's really going on.
And so what could be conventional wisdom today?
Oh my gosh, sure.
But a drug can also be a gateway drug because it introduces you to that lifestyle and it puts you around the people that are using other substances. So it may not be that the drug itself is making you want to try something stronger, but it's the environment that you've put yourself in and the associates you are now hanging out with,
and a change in access, and a change in access, and a change in access, and a change in attitude. The attitude of I'm going to take a substance that's going to fix my problem.
Yeah. Well, but in that same mind, I would say, and a lot of people scoff at this idea, but I really think I can get in touch with my first experience with chocolate, and it just blew my mind. And I'm saying, well, I want some more of that. So truly, chocolate could be considered a gateway drug, but that's okay. Chocolate's a good thing. They just had a new study that revealed that people that use a lot of chocolate, it helps with arrhythmia. So that's a good thing.
Well, now be careful. I'm a confirmed chocoholic myself, and that could stem as fighting words, my friend.
So some drugs are good drugs, and Timothy Leary wrote about that, and about how the good drug makes you feel bad first and good later. But a bad drug makes you feel good first, and then you feel bad later, so you're more intent. You're more likely to use the drug again, as they say, the hair of the dog, to recover from the down side of the drug. But one thing before I sign off, there also in neuroscience, there's been some papers published some findings on the use of psilocybin and LSD to help people recover from addictions. And I just wish that our government would lighten up a little bit and realize that some of these substances could really help some people under controlled situations. I mean, my God, I'm not talking about getting high for fun. I'm talking about using these type of very strong substances to help people recover. And I think I have some ideas how it works, but I'm just a layman, so I'm going to stop there.
Okay. Well, many thanks for calling in. We're going to be discussing that and spread the word that
I will.
I'm going to have these folks back on the air with me in the not-too-distant future, so spread the word. More questions, more comments, more input is always going to be welcome. Thank you for calling in.
Good job. All right, over now.
Okay, some very, very interesting comments.
Sure.
That again, that ties back in with a lot of what we've been talking about, the need to know. And what I said a little while ago, in light of our friends calling in, that what could be considered conventional wisdom now could be turned on its ear in a matter of days.
Well, and what works for one or doesn't work for one may not work for someone else. So just because one person became addicted to chocolate, to cigarettes, and then that led on to something else doesn't necessarily mean that everyone that's addicted to chocolate is going to want to move on to harder substances.
That's one of the reasons I think it's so important to have an evaluation or an assessment by a trained a lot of times by a trained professional. And I think that's where Kristy and I's roles come in. That we're independent. We're independent of your family. We're independent of a lot of other aspects, and we can be objective.
That was the word. Now we're almost out of time, so one more time, contact information for both of you, please.
Okay. Kristy Burton at Central Arkansas Group Counseling. It's 4700 West Commercial Drive, Suite B4, which is next to Golden Corral off Warden Road in North Little Rock. 501-918-9160 is the telephone number, and you can contact us by email at centralarkansasgroupcounseling@gmail.com or visit our website.
Okay.
And you can reach me. I'm Christopher Gerhart. My telephone number is 501-478-0182.
Okay. You know, we just scratched the surface of both of these very definite areas that need attention, that need more research. The invitation, the metaphoric door to KABF is open for you to come back on. Let's get some more calls coming in. Let's get some more folks to talk about experiences and then follow up. Let us know what's going on. I'm hoping that I don't have to give in to my violent side and arm twisting into doing this.
No, just bring chocolate.
Oh, there you go.
Chocolate is good.
There you go. Ed Blair is standing around impatiently waiting to get started with his 2 hours of mixed blues rock and the ringing of somebody's chimes. Next week, another pretty important issue that we're going to be looking at. I'm going to be very happily having an on-air conversation with representatives of the Arkansas